Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Walk. This is for episode number 5. So a bit of a milestone, I suppose, for the journey so far. And I suppose the feedback from all the other episodes has been fantastic. Episode 4 was our first one with video. I will be trying to continue to do these with video from now on. Obviously, environment permitting. Sometimes I can't, sometimes I can, but anyway, either way, we'll try and do this more visual. I'm in the process at the moment of trying to lock in our first guest. The thoughts around having guests was something that I was going to do from the get-go, but I thought it might be nice to sort of get to know who I am, what the journey is going to be about, what our sort of mission is, and cover some key topics before stepping into the space of having guests on. And they're not going to be, all the guests aren't going to be, people that you may know. They could be people just from my walk, my journey, some who I've worked with, some who I've met along the way, some are mates, some are family, and there's also some special guests that I'd love to have on board, but obviously you need the stars to align for that sort of stuff to happen. So I'm working hard in the background at locking a few of those in, but yeah, for now this will be another episode surrounding, I suppose, the topics that we normally cover, which are the fatherhood, growth, mental health. And for this episode, I've called it The Father I'm Becoming. And the theme, I suppose, around this will be sort of identity, breaking cycles, presence over pressure, and intentional fatherhood, which is something that I'm trying to practice every day, and every moment that I get to spend with my family, I absolutely cherish. And at times it feels like it's not enough, and will never be enough. But every time that I do spend with them, I'm trying to make it really intentional, even if it's just hanging out in the lounge room, doing nothing, just making sure that I'm present when I am there, and not letting too many distractions from the outside come in and affect my time and my quality of time with my wife and my children, especially. I suppose I just wanted to sort of get into, I suppose the shift for me now will be, personally, is probably trying to go from the area of being in survival mode to now it's really being intentional. There was a long period of time where I was in survival mode, and at times I still am. I know when Sol has his surgeries, they're usually a really rough time for us as a family, and we really, you're depleted, you're exhausted, and you're just constantly in a state of fight or flight. And it does feel like survival mode a lot of the time. For a lot of families with children too, with needs, it does feel like survival a lot of the time. And it's about how to get through those times where it is difficult and overwhelming to really fight back and gain a bit of control, which isn't a very easy thing to do. But I suppose after the discussions we've had in episodes 1 to 4, and spoken about pain, pressure, and burnout, I suppose the question starts to linger a little bit of like, who am I choosing to be through all of this? And like I said, this episode really is going to be about fatherhood, and not as an idea or an ideology, but actually as a practice. And it's not really going to be about the father I was. It's going to be about the father that I am becoming and wanting to become. I sort of look at the fathers we came from, and the sort of generational patterns and how they shaped us. The dads I grew up with, whether it was my own father, who's a fantastic man, has his own quirks and his own low points that I've lived through and been there through, when it comes to him sort of personally, and then also through, his relationship with my mother. They're still married. We're blessed that they're still together at this point in time, but sort of like the man he was then, and sort of what it's taught me as I've gotten older. My dad was a fantastic, as I said, gentleman, Everyone loved him. Everyone wanted to be in a room with him. He lightened up the mood. He's always been funny. He's caring. But I still remember there was periods of time where he probably wasn't the man that you do see now. And I think that just comes from growth and maturity and probably getting older and realizing that there's more important things in life than getting worked up um, and losing your cool over the small things. I mean, he's always worked hard. He still works hard, extremely hard. And, I see him now and I think how run down and tired he looks a lot of the time. And I just want him to be able to take a break and take a step back and get back in touch with what he enjoys. I know he loves doing his Lego, and it's kind of funny. You do go shopping with him and stuff, and it's like going shopping with one of the kids. It's kind of like, I want some Lego, or I want, this little puzzle thing to put together or whatever. But I mean, I don't judge because it's great for him. It keeps his mind active. But I just do see the depletion in him as he's gotten older. And I think as a father, it's kind of and as a young man, it starts to become a bit of a scary space as you get older, seeing your role model and your superhero, I suppose, getting older and slower and wearier. And, there's sometimes I just want to drag him away from what his reality is and just give him some time to himself and get him back in tune with what he enjoys doing. And, what I think fathers before us really gave us was probably a sense of they sort of taught you a work ethic. They taught you, my dad did show a lot of love and stuff, but they had their own unique ways of showing love. Like when I played sport when I was younger, I was pretty good at it. And I remember my father being quite harsh on my performances and how I played. And instead of sort of coming and just enjoying watching his son play sport and being joyful in the moment, it was very much like a critiquing session at times. And, there was a period of time where I told him, I don't want you to come anymore. And I think a lot of fathers, a lot of males too that I speak to of my age group, a lot of their fathers are very much the same. And you look at it now and you think it's because they believed in us and wanted the best for us. But at the same time, probably didn't express it the way they should have. And it's probably finding that happy medium and that level ground where you can encourage your children without pressuring your children. And I think that's probably a big key of how I treat my kids. Like, if they want to, they can do whatever they want to do in life, whatever their passions are. I will encourage them to pursue and follow, even if they change passions every couple of months until they find what really clicks for them. But I think it's really about, juggling that happy medium where you do need to be firm sometimes. And that's not out of a place of harsh parenting. It's from a place of setting them up to be in the real world, but also a place of gentle, caring, nurturing as well, and picking them up when they fall down. Like I said, my father and many fathers around the age group of my generation were a different type of parent. They were very much, sorted out yourself to a degree. And it's only probably now that I'm getting older, my old man sort of taking the step back and, what can I do to help? And when I think having Sol was a massive turning point for him, because I know he looks so forward to being a grandparent. And as I've touched on previously, having a situation arise like it did with Sol changed and shifted a lot in the family dynamic. And I know it affected my dad quite a bit, and I know it still does. But like I said, what they gave us really were core values around, I suppose, respecting your elders, respecting other people. And the one thing I do see my dad do a lot is, or he doesn't do it as much anymore, but when we were younger, he used to do a lot for other people. And sometimes it'd feel like he didn't want to do much for those closest to him. He'd prioritize people who you probably didn't need to prioritize. And then the ones that mattered the most, he may not have. And, he always took me to my sport. He always did all that type of stuff, but probably, and I see that now with a lot of fathers too, from older generations, that they really do try and help everyone else out and help everyone before helping probably the ones that are the closest to them. And again, they're not doing it intentionally. They're not doing it on purpose. They're doing it purely because that's all they've kind of known and they've probably grown up with. I suppose what they probably couldn't give us fathers prior to this generation of fathers was, like I said, probably that real presence at home. My dad's always worked. And when we did have time with him, it was fantastic, but it was few and far between at times. Like he worked away a lot of the time, like I have in my earlier years. And um, he did that with like two kids and everything. And like, I don't know how he did it. I wouldn't see him sometimes for a few months. And you don't realize when you're younger, you just think, oh, dad's away for work and, I've got mum there. But it probably does take a toll on young men not having their fathers around as much as they could have. And I still got people in my life who do work away a lot of the time, and you don't realize the impact that has on the dynamic of a family, and especially you can see, I suppose, the impact it has on their relationships as well. And they did do the best with what they had, and they've probably come from a generation prior to them, which was a very hard-headed generation of parents. And then you go back before that. I mean, that was parents who went through world wars, and that's a whole different dynamic. And I couldn't imagine the stress and worry that came with that. But it's one of those things that I look at how my father is, and I try to take the absolute best traits out from what he taught me and what he's done for me. And the things that he didn't do well, I try not to do at all. And sometimes I'll catch myself thinking like, oh, I'm speaking a little bit like my mother or my father or whatever. And it's about catching myself in that moment and really taking a step back and being like, well, that's not who I am as a parent. Again, not that they were terrible parents. They were great majority of the time. But obviously I try to do things different to how they did a lot of their things, because you don't realize as you get older, you do a lot of what happened when you're younger does affect you as you get older. Like I've always sort of made a vouch to myself to never share my money troubles with my children, or never share my relationship troubles with my children, like none of that type of stuff. And I feel like the generation before us probably didn't know how to handle that as well. And that was, they were exhausted just like we are, except the difference is we're willing to put the work in now to try and change how we are as individuals. Love looked a lot sort of different, I think, when growing up. Like, I grew up in a family where, we didn't have everything. We didn't have much at times. And so it was always like trying to sort of shower with gifts and stuff when they could. And I think I'd probably take more fulfillment out of just being showered with time and presence than gifts and stuff like that. Strength, I suppose, like learning how to be a father and what strength looked like. Strength looked very much like being a really good worker, working hard for your family, making a good paycheck, making a good income, providing, putting food on the table. And these are all things that we still do now, but they're not the core values of what make us a fantastic father, as I've touched on in previous episodes. Stuff that was never really spoken about was probably the male feeling side of things. It was spoken about. It's probably spoken about more now, because I think my parents, especially my father, have probably seen the shift in me becoming a parent. And obviously, like I said, dealing with what we deal with Soul, they've seen a massive shift in how I am and who I am as a person. It's probably a bit of a shock to their system. But as I've said before, like that's just me now. And I think it's the truest version of who I've ever been. And I think, unfortunately, for them, maybe they're a bit in shock, because it's like, well, where did that quiet, people-pleasing sort of child go, who we knew so well and, we cherished? And I don't think they don't cherish me anymore. I think they still do, but I just think it looks very different to them. And, like I said, the stuff that I swore I'd do differently is, I would never discuss financial troubles. I'd never discuss relationship troubles, work troubles. I try never to bring work home. And what I don't realize is when I say I'm not trying to bring work home, when it has got too much, I bring it home and I'm not present, which is a weird thing to do, because you're not you're telling yourself not to think about it, which then in turn makes you think about it, which then makes you act different. So that's something I'm definitely working on, but we don't really become fathers like in a vacuum and in in that sense. We become fathers shaped by the men who came before us. And I am grateful that I have my father who is my father. And again, he's taught me a lot about, I think, what a good man needs to be. Excuse me. But has also shown me a lot of things that I would do differently. And again, it's not out of judgment. He did the best with what he could do at the time. But there's definitely things that I do now to ensure that my children don't have to feel certain ways that I may have felt when I was younger and how I did feel at times when I was younger, especially dealing with, knowing what's going on in a relationship and knowing what's going on in the background with money and knowing about this. And I didn't need to know all that as a child, and I'd do my absolute best to not put that into my children. I suppose, we've got to grow, and with growth, we can't sort of hold resentment. I suppose just awareness and understanding that, it's not easy being a parent. It wouldn't have been easy for the parents before us. And awareness is probably the first break in the cycle. Trauma, like I've got one family member who does carry a bit of trauma from their past. And I mean, it explains their behavior, but in no way, shape or form does it excuse it. And had that person probably put a bit more time into themselves and dropped the ego and swallowed a bit of their pride, they probably would have, instead of telling themselves they're happy all the time, they could actually genuinely go and try and make themselves happy majority of the time. And again, you're never happy all the time, but putting the work in definitely pays off in the long run. And part of healing is not erasing the past. It's just how you respond to things and responding differently. Like I said, the trauma doesn't explains their behavior, but it never excuses it. And that's one thing, I when I had Soul, carried around, and I still probably do now, but a fair bit of trauma. And for a while I used that as my excuse to be why I was the way I was being and stuff. And I look back now and I'm like, there was no need for that. I could have just worked through it. And probably tried to repair it earlier, and try to understand that repairing is more important than perfection. And like I've said, progression is more important than perfection. And a lot of that came from probably me learning how to pause instead of reacting, apologizing to my children when I put them in situations where I have raised my voice, or I may have come across as a fearful entity to them because of, you don't realize you're bigger than them. Your voice changes. They get scared. You don't, like I said, in the previous episode, you don't have to physically harm your children. And I hope no one physically harms their children, but you don't have to do that to be scary and overpowering. It could just be how your body language is and how you talk. You sort of need to allow your children to see emotion safely. I've touched on it before, but I'm no stranger to, crying in front of Soul or being honest with him when he asks me, sometimes he'll say, "Dad, what are you feeling?" And I'll just go, "I'm pretty frustrated, mate, because of this," or "Pretty annoyed, buddy, because of this," or "A bit upset, mate, and it's not because of you. It's just I love you so much and I'm trying my best to do this." And again, not putting any pressure on him because he's just a child, but letting him know that it's safe to have, emotions and all feelings are welcome. And, it's trying to sort of model growth instead of control. And that's one thing. You just got to keep learning and growing that mindset. And whether it comes from reading or speaking to other families or other mates or members of the community who have gone through similar things. And, our children don't really need healed fathers. They need fathers who are healing. And I think that you're never going to be perfect. I look at probably, like I said, my dad now, and he's probably at a place where he's almost probably healed, and he's a lot more relaxed and chilled. But for a long point of time, he probably needed to do a little bit of healing, and same with my mother as well. They probably needed to put more time into themselves. But coming from the generation prior to them, they did not know that wasn't the important thing. It was sort of that suck it up, move forward mentality, which leads us to a generation of people that we have today who are now trying to fix things from their past that their parents were unaware that they were doing. And again, it's not their fault. They were doing the best with what they had. And I suppose what we're trying to do is we're trying to redefine what a good father is. The outdated definitions of masculinity and fatherhood just probably don't sit that well in society anymore. The old definition was to be a provider and a protector and a stoic, and you self-sacrifice to the point of burnout. You speak to older blokes or older parents and they're always like, oh, but I did this on 1 hour's sleep. And it's like, yeah, but like there's no gold medal for that. Because at the end of the day, all you did was give us a half-assed version of yourself or the bare minimum of yourself, but you were giving it to everyone else. And I suppose the new definition that I'm trying to employ, and I encourage others to try and employ, is to try and be like, present, emotionally stable, accountable, just be human. Like if you fuck up, apologize, repair it, move forward. And just continuously ensuring that there's a safe environment for our kids. Like you got to think that, like I look at my kids now, and one's 4 and one's just turned 1, and I'm like, man, it's going so quick. But at the same time, they're so little. You think they've been there forever, but it's only really been 4 years of your life. I'm 33. So the other 29, I didn't have any worries when it came to obviously the parenthood side of things. But now I'm trying to unpack all these other things that I'd consolidated in my back of my mind and hid in a little box, so I didn't have to unpack it back then when I had ample time. And now when I've got no time, I'm trying to do it, and it's not an easy thing to do. But I do encourage people to, like I said, unpack and repair when you are wrong. A big key, I suppose, is presence over productivity, consistency over intensity, connection over control, and kids really need you and not your exhaustion. And again, seeing the older generations and who are still now working, and they're constantly exhausted, you just want to be able to give them a hug and take them away from what, their reality of having to still work. And, with the current climate and everything, it's extremely difficult. And you want to take them away and allow them just to be the carefree version of themselves. And I look at myself, and when I get to that older age, and my 2 boys, if they do decide to have children, I want to be as emotionally available as I can be for them, because they're going to go through exactly what I'm going through right now. As in the parenthood side of things, I hope they don't have as much to unpack as I have to. But I want to be emotionally available for them and their grandchildren, That's the one thing that you want moving forward, is to try and find a little bit of peace. And try and not exhaust yourself too much, and don't pass that on to your children. Being a good father isn't about how much you can carry, I suppose. It's about how available you are while you're carrying it. And a main key takeaway from that is probably choosing to be intentional in chaos. Even when life is overwhelming, be very intentional. You can't control, certain circumstances, but you can definitely control your response. And fatherhood in exhaustion is even harder, and it's amplified so much higher when you are exhausted and you feel like the world's caving in on you. But showing up in your imperfect state still counts to the kids, is what I'm starting to learn. If you sort of sit there today and you while we're listening to this podcast or after, sit down, maybe reflect a little bit and just go like, what matters most to me today? So like, is it meeting a certain deadline for work, or is it getting that paycheck in, or whatever? Like or is it being intentional with my kids when I get home, or being really intentional on the weekends when I don't have anything else to bother me? And, where can I soften instead of push? So if your child's acting a certain way, like, Sol's got crippling anxiety. makes it very difficult to go anywhere. And for a long time, it was just like, it would become so much. I'd just be like, oh, fuck, I can't do this. Like, and I'd say to my wife, I can't fucking keep doing this, blah, blah. But now I'm learning to have that softer approach and be like, I know it's hard, mate, and I know it's difficult. And I can't imagine how you're feeling. Why don't you talk to me about it? Or why don't we go and do this? Or maybe try this route. And like, you know, what does, I suppose, showing up look like today, and not ideally? Like, if you're not at full capacity because you are exhausted, what does showing up look like for you today? How does it look? How does your ideal day look when you're not exhausted? And how does your ideal day look when you are exhausted? Having open lines of communication with your partner, especially. Like my partner and I will just say, like, I don't have the capacity this afternoon to look after both of them. Can you? And I'll do this. Or like, I'm happy to cook. Can you just take the two boys? Or I need to go hang this washing out. And like, you know, she'll have her little things that take her away from the chaos she's surrounded by all day when I come home. And then there's things that I'll do to take me away from the chaos of work and now the chaos of two kids. And it sort of just becomes a dynamic you really need to work on, especially in a marriage and a relationship. And, you know, intentional fatherhood, I suppose, isn't about like big gestures. It's about small choices made consistently. So you don't have to do the big surprise entrance, gifts, whatever. It's just those small things, you know, like that's 15 minutes on the mat with them reading a couple books, or pretending to be a fucking dinosaur, or whatever it is that the child wants to do. Just being really intentional with it, not having the phone in your hand, not being distracted by outside worries and concerns. That's probably my key message for today, is to like, yeah, small intentional choices that are made consistently will then lead to bigger and greater outcomes. The father, I suppose, I'm becoming is, I suppose it's just a father who's there. I don't always have to be there fully, but still be there and be present. And when I say that, I mean there's going to be a million and one things that you carry around with you on the day-to-day. And to be able to let go of all that when you walk through the door or you're at home, that means more to the child than walking in and going, oh, here's this gift. Like, here you go. Congratulations, you won a gift. Awesome. And then removing yourself from there and being detached. That's one thing you can't do. And fatherhood's changed me, like I've said numerous times, to the truest version of myself, I truly believe. And I'm still trying to find the full version of that. But, you know, it's definitely taught me a lot about patience, growth, my mindset, what's important in life, what I value. And I suppose having soul really reshaped my values. So I was very much a person who, you know, I'll go here for this person, I'll do that for this person. It's like, now I fucking got time for nothing and no one. And that's again, I don't judge anyone here. I shouldn't be judged on that either. At times it does feel like I get judged on that. Not by everyone, but some people who are close. And I just think to myself, well, you've got no idea. And your reaction is probably because you haven't worked on yourself enough. But yeah, like Soul's journey and then our journey with Soul's just reshaped my values massively. I'm a real family man. I do worry a lot of the time whether I do enough for them. And again, being the only provider at home, like financial provider, because, you know, of our situation, you feel like it's a constant balance between work and family. And I'm not one of those people who's content just seeing my kids 2 days a week. So, you know, it definitely has taught me a lot about priorities and prioritizing what's important, and not, you know, go back, like I said, years ago in the previous episode, like years ago for me, it would have been catching up with mates every week and, you know, drinking and stuff like that. And like, I haven't stopped doing that because I don't enjoy, well, I don't actually enjoy it that much anymore. Like, I don't find it enjoyable, but I do it because I don't do it, because I just don't want to miss out on any time with the kids and any time with my family. And it's really made me realize how valuable time is. And then having Atlas has sort of opened me up to understanding what balance is, like having one child who can go outside whenever they want and having another child who struggles to go outside on sunny days and stuff. You know, you got Atlas sitting at the door, banging on the glass, wanting to go out. Sol, who's like, it's too bright, I need to be in a shaded room. And to try and juggle that and that's every day, is an extremely hard and daunting task. And you do wake up a lot of the time going like, fuck, what's today going to bring? But yeah, it's taught me a lot about balance and not feeling guilty for taking Atlas outside as long as Sol's cup is full inside and his needs are met inside. As long as I can take Atlas out there, because I don't want him to miss out on stuff in his childhood either because of Sol's condition, but I also don't want Sol to feel like he's burdening us. And it's such a fucking big juggle and it's so difficult to manage, but it is something that's getting easier and something that's getting better. And I'm lucky I've got an awesome partner in the corner with me for, you know, sometimes a lot of the time it's just the two of us boxing our way out of all our fights against the world. But I wouldn't want another partner in my corner. And it's really taught me to, suppose, let go of like ego-driven success and choosing presence over success. Like I was very much someone when I was younger who was like, I want to be high up in this job, or I want to do this, or I'm going to be the best at this. Whereas now it's just like, as long as I can be the best father at home, then the other stuff to me is fucking obsolete. Like it doesn't really bother me. I'll go to work. I'll do my job. I know I do my job well, but I'm not going to go above and beyond, you know, like especially I've touched on early episodes, like in the industry I'm in construction, it seems like the directors want you to give the same amount of care as they do. And the owners want you to care the same amount as an owner of a company does. And it's like, well, if I'm going to put that much time and energy into caring, I may as well do my own fucking thing and take my own risks. But I'm here to work for you and I'm employed to do a job. I'll do that job and I'll go home. And a lot of the time they don't like it, but it is what it is. Like time and presence is more important with family than, you know, filling someone else's pockets with the benefits of your hard work and exhaustion. And yeah, I've got a quote here that says, becoming a good father isn't a destination. It's 1,000 small decisions made tired, scared, but full of love. And I thought I'd share that because that's how I feel a lot of the time. If you're trying to reach this destination of I'm the best father and I'm going to continue to be the best father and it's, you know, you're never going to reach it. Again, journey of progression, not perfection. And those little decisions that you do decide to make and, you know, go outside and take the kids for a bike ride when you're exhausted for 10 minutes, they'll remember that for months, you know, and that's 10 minutes of your day sort of thing. And it's changing your perspective and flipping the script a little bit. And instead of being that the fathers of the past where it was sort of, you know, keep yourself busy. And it's hard for us too because we're not a screen-based family. Like we have movie night once a week. Like our kids don't have iPads, our kids don't have phones. I like, and again, don't judge. I do not judge. Like if that's your child, that's fine. If that works for you, that's fine. But for us, like we don't have that. So trying to keep kids like, and one who's especially stuck indoors all day, constantly like stimulated and kept happy and playful is so hard to do. But, you know, my wife at home does a fantastic job. She's very invested into the two boys and she makes that space for them so safe and so enjoyable. You know, I get home and it's like, you know, we did this today, Dada, and we did this. And I'm just like, fuck, how do you have the energy to keep them going like that? But yeah, she's an incredible woman. And I know when I'm home, I find it hard, but it's again, you know, now it's a big journey of trying to make Sol get comfortable with outside. His anxiety sort of pulls him away from wanting to go out there. So now it's a case of, come on, mate, I've made this shady for you. I went and bought a big gazebo with sidewalls and stuff. And I'm like, this is like a cubby house. This is your play area while we're staying where we're staying at the moment until we find our next house. And we've been going out there every second afternoon and he's starting to get more comfortable with it and loves it. And he says, you know, Dad, I'm having the best time out here playing outside. And I'm just like, okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. We're starting to see traction. But again, that's taken so long and so many small steps and so many small movements towards a goal just to get there. And it's been exhausting, but hard work does pay off and persistence pays off. I suppose this episode hopefully is sort of shown the direction I'm sort of heading in, being a father, and the direction I want to sort of take it in. And I thought before I would wrap up this episode that I'd share something. Everything I've spoken about today, the pressure, burnt out, the mistakes, the growth, and everything I've spoken about in the previous episodes, it all comes back to two little people who changed, I suppose, my life forever. And, the next part is a letter that I've written to my two boys. I wasn't going to share it. It's sort of been a back and forth with myself. Do I share this? Do I not? But sort of over the break, I was like, maybe it'd be a nice little gesture just to sort of show the father that I'm becoming, and to be able to put thoughts down onto paper is a great tool. But then to read from that paper to them or to you, the audience, isn't always an easy thing. And I've had to read this probably about 5 times, 10 times to sort of get through it fully, because it can get a little bit emotional. But the next part is a letter, and it's for my boys, Sol and Atlas. And if you are a parent listening, maybe parts of this will sound familiar for you as well. And I'm just going to have a sip of water and before I start reading my letter. And I hope it resonates with you a little bit. Hey, my boys, this part is just for you. One day you might hear this, maybe when you're older, maybe when you understand more than you do now. But I want you to know who I was while you were growing up and who I was trying to become for you. Sol, you came into this world in a way none of us expected. From the very first moment I saw you, I knew our journey was going to be different, harder in ways, scarier in ways, and a lot deeper too. I didn't have the answers. I didn't have control. And most days I didn't even know if I was strong enough or good enough. But I knew one thing straight away. I would walk through anything for you. There have been days where I've been scared, mate. Days I've sat quietly carrying fears I didn't know how to put into words. Days I've felt helpless watching you face things that no child should have to face. If you've ever felt my hands shake or seen worry in my eyes, that was never doubt in you. That was love trying to protect something that I couldn't control. Sometimes without realizing it, I've tried to shape you into a strong man before remembering that you're just a little boy. I've wanted to prepare you for a world that hasn't always been gentle. I've wanted to harden you just enough so nothing can break you. But there are moments I've caught myself and thought, he deserves to just be a kid. I worry about that all the time. I worry that your path has made you grow up faster than you should have, that hospital rooms have replaced playgrounds too often, and that resilience has come before innocence. And if there were moments your childhood felt interrupted, I want you to know that breaks my heart. Not because of who you are, but because of how deeply you deserve peace. Atlas, I want to speak to you too, mate. You came into this world full of light, curiosity, and kindness. You're gentle, funny, chaotic, energetic, loving, and a beautiful little boy with a big heart. You don't have medical needs. You don't need appointments or surgeries. But that doesn't mean your journey has been untouched. You've been dragged along to hospital visits, waiting rooms, and long days that were never about you. You've had to share your dad with worry, urgency, and exhaustion more times than I wish I've ever had to. And I carry a fear with me, quietly and constantly, that in the shadow of everything your brother has faced, you might miss out on parts of your own childhood. I worry about your passions, the things that light you up, the things you love to do, the parts of you that deserve time, space, and encouragement. I never want you to feel like you had to shrink yourself or wait for your turn or be the easy one. Just know this: I see you. I see your patience. I see your understanding. I see your quiet strength. And if there are moments where you feel overlooked, I'm sorry. That was never because you mattered any less. It was because I was trying to hold too much at once and learning slowly how to do that better. Boys, there's something I want you both to know. All I want in this world is to be home with you more. To be present, to be available, to be a dad who has energy left at the end of the day. I work hard to keep food on the table and a roof over your heads. And sometimes in doing that, I lose track of what matters most. There have been days where work pulled me away more than I wanted. Days where exhaustion stole parts of me I wish I'd saved for you. And if there was moments that you've ever felt that, again, I'm sorry. It's not because I didn't love you enough, but because I was trying to protect you in the only way I thought I knew how to. I also want you to know this: I've chosen to start healing myself. And I didn't do that because I was broken. I did it because I want to be a father you're proud of. A father who's home more, a father who's present more, and a father who isn't burnt out all the time. A father you enjoy being around. I don't want you to inherit my exhaustion. I want you to inherit my growth. I want you to see that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to choose presence over pressure. You've both taught me more than I could ever teach you. You've taught me patience, perspective, and you've taught me what real strength looks like. Strength isn't just pushing through. It's knowing when to stop, when to soften, and when to come home. There may be times in your lives where the world doesn't understand you and where people see difference before they see depth. Life at times will feel unfair or heavy. And when that happens, I want you to remember this: you were never born to meet the world's expectations. The world was meant to learn from you. You are not broken. You are not less. You are not defined by challenges, comparisons, or circumstances. You're defined by your hearts, your kindness, and the way you care for each other. If I could promise you one thing, it would be this: I'll keep learning. I'll keep growing. I'll keep healing the parts of myself so that I don't become yours to carry. I won't be a perfect father, but I will be a present one, an honest one, a father who listens, a father who apologizes, a father who loves you without conditions. No matter how old you are when you hear this, know that you were, and always will be, the greatest things that ever happened to me. You didn't just change my life, you gave it direction. I love you both more than words will ever hold, always have, and always will. Love, Dada. So that's the letter that I've written to the two boys. And I felt like when I wrote that, it was just an awesome opportunity to probably get a lot off my chest, because you sort of do sit there a lot of the time and worry about your kids and if they're all right and if they're going to be okay. And, you know, if the letters sort of stirred something in you, like it has, you know, it did me when I wrote it, like it's not failure. That's showing that you care. And there's a lot of times where you're going to feel guilty, you know, with the work side of things and the time and the presence side of things. You just need to understand that guilt comes from a place of love. And once you start becoming self-aware, it means you're already starting to grow. And, you know, presence can start today, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Imperfect presence is just as good as, is better than no presence. And And, the main thing I want to say is you don't need to change everything. You just need to start noticing. And once you start noticing, you're becoming aware. So that means the growth has started. That's the end of episode 5. In the coming sort of weeks, we'll have more things popping up, more episodes. I encourage you to comment on anything, leave me some advice, feedback, topics that you want covered, guests that you want to hear. But yeah, that sort of episodes 1 to 5 was sort of a big emotional arc, and I was hoping that this episode would sort of close it and give the listeners a bit of an idea of the direction I'm heading in as a father, and give them a bit of time to sort of think and maybe go back through the episodes and see what resonates with you the most. And hopefully there's some points in there that can help. And, I really do encourage you to share these episodes and this journey with another father or a parent who needs it. Because at the end of the day, the core message for the walk is progression over perfection, and it's to help one another and be there for one another. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sticking it out for these 5 episodes, and here's to the next 5. Again, follow, like, subscribe, comment, do whatever you need to do. Reach out whenever you feel the need to. So yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone who's been following, everyone who's listening, and everyone who's on this walk with me. I'm Jake Donnelly, and this is The Walk.